Tonight's topic is the flaws in the script of the original Star Trek series. The flaws in the script of the original Star Trek series. In the episode called The Enemy Within, where Captain Kirk is split into two identical looking beings, one good, one bad, by a transporter malfunction, and there is a landing party with Sulu and three other people on a planet where the temperature gets as low as minus 120 degrees Fahrenheit at night. They can't beam the landing party aboard the Enterprise because a transporter malfunction might cause them to split into two identical looking beings as well. The Enterprise could have signaled for another starship to beam the landing party aboard their ship. They didn't do so. And if another starship wasn't available to beam the landing party aboard their ship, they certainly could have launched a shuttlecraft to pick up the landing party, as a shuttlecraft was certainly revealed in a number of future episodes that was carried on the Enterprise. They didn't send out a shuttlecraft either. So the fact that they didn't send a message to another starship to beam the men aboard their ship or launch a shuttlecraft to pick up the landing party represents a major flaw in the script. The landing party could have been prepared with warm clothing as well, but they weren't. So this represents a minor flaw in the script as well. In the episode called The City on the Edge of Forever, McCoy accidentally shoots a needle into himself with a large amount of cordrazine in it. McCoy becomes delirious, transports himself down to a planet with a past Earth time machine. McCoy enters the time machine and changes Earth's history. The Enterprise disappears as a result. Kirk and Spock enter the machine in order to set right what McCoy has done wrong and end up on Earth in New York City in 1930. Kirk and Spock meet a woman named Edith Keeler. Kirk falls deeply in love with Edith Keeler, but Kirk and Spock discover that McCoy saved Edith Keeler's life from being killed in a traffic accident in 1930. As a result of this act, Edith Keeler then goes on to found a large peace movement which she leads. She convinces President Roosevelt to delay the U.S.'s entry into World War II. This enables Germany to develop the atomic bomb first, which enables Germany to win World War II, as Germany launches atomic weapons against Allied as Germany launches atomic weapons against Allied countries. As a result of this learned fact, Kirk and Spock then prevent Edith Keeler from being saved by Dr. McCoy and sets history right again. The flaw with this story is that the United States entered into World War II once Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7, 1941. The United States declared war with Japan and Germany immediately after this incident. No peace group, no matter how popular they were, would have prevented the U.S. from declaring war with Germany and Japan once the Pearl Harbor attack occurred. This episode claims that peace negotiations dragged on due to the popularity of Edith Keeler's peace movement. But war started with Germany for Great Britain and Canada in September 1939, once Germany invaded Poland. However, as popular as a peace movement in these countries, Canada and Great Britain could have been, this probably wouldn't have had any effect on Germany's motives or actions. In the episode called Amok Time, Spock fights Captain Kirk for possession of T'Pring, a Vulcan woman promised to Spock when he was a child. The old battle axe T'Pau doesn't tell Captain Kirk that the fight with Spock on Vulcan continues to either Kirk or Spock is dead, so Kirk accepts the challenge so as to avoid the possible challenge of Ston, T'Pring's boyfriend, fighting Spock instead. This episode is far-fetched nonsense, as an advanced civilization as Vulcan wouldn't likely resort to such a primitive way of selecting for a mate and fighting a combat to the death to retain this mate. In the episode Return to Tomorrow, Kirk, Spock, and Dr. Ann Mulhall all allow non-corporeal beings to inhabit their bodies while these aliens prepare androids for themselves. Every moment the beings remain in the host's bodies puts terrible stress on Kirk, Spock, and Mulhall. Then Hennick, who occupies Spock's body, decides that android life isn't for him and secretly plans to remain in Spock's body. And to assume Spock's identity, he must kill Sargon, who occupies Kirk's body. because Sargon, the leader of the non-corporeal beings, would not allow Henoch to keep Spock's body. Jim Kirk thinks he destroys Spock's consciousness by destroying the receptacle that Spock's consciousness was stored in. Kirk shouldn't have given up on Spock's consciousness returning to Spock's body in the future, even though he planned to destroy Henoch, since Spock was his friend. Fortunately for Spock, Spock's consciousness was actually stored in Nurse Chapel's brain, so later Spock's consciousness was actually returned to his body, and all turned out well. In the episode The Conscience of the King, Kirk beams up Anton Caridian in his Shakespearean acting troupe. Anton Caridian later turns out to be Kodos, the executioner, who was the governor of the Earth colony Tarsus 20 years ago, and killed over 50% of its population, which had 8,000 people. The food supply ship arrived earlier than expected, so Kodos' killing over 4,000 people so the rest could live was needless. But if the food supply ship didn't make it so soon as expected, then many people would have died anyways. Kodos decided that the more valued members of their society would live. Is this idea completely bad? I'm not sure. So this is maybe a small flaw in the episode. In the episode The Omega Glory, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam aboard the Exeter in orbit around Omega 4. There they discover her crew reduced to a crystallized powder caused by a deadly virus to which Kirk and the others have now been exposed. On the planet, they learn Exeter's captain, Ron Tracy, has violated the Prime Directive, that he interfered with the natives' affairs by supplying phasers to a Calm village to kill attacking Yangs. But the Yangs started the aggression, so the Calms and Captain Tracy have every right to defend themselves by killing attacking Yangs. In future episodes, I will show that Captain Kirk violated the Prime Directive non-interference code a number of times, but justifiably so. The Prime Directive non-interference code should be at best a goal, but it shouldn't be absolute, as there are situations which justify it being violated. This treating Captain Tracy as a criminal helped largely lead to his downfall, in my opinion. In the episode called The Cloud Minders, a botanical plague strikes a Federation planet. Kirk and the Enterprise head to Ardana, the only planet where the antidote Xenite is mined. But Kirk and Spock discover the miners, called troglodytes, are treated as subordinates by the planet's rulers. The troglodytes, suspicious of Kirk's motives, refuse to give up the Xenite. Without it, Bayans will die. Kirk threatens Placis, the leader of Ardana, called the High Advisor, for using torture against a troglodyte disruptor, thus violating the Prime Directive of non-interference in a planet's affairs. Kirk later orders Spock to beam the High Advisor Placis to a sealed-in mine, with Kirk and Vanna, a disruptor troglodyte, there as well, also interfering with the planet Ardana's affairs. Abducting a planetary official is a serious crime, but Kirk wants to show Placis that the raw Xenite gas stunts the mental development of an individual. Kirk was right to do this abducting of a planetary official, as this ploy allowed all to see that the raw Xenite did cause mental retardation and did produce beneficial results for both the troglodyte miners, that is, masks were given to these miners to block out the gas that caused their stunted mental growth, and the Xenite mineral was provided to the Federation to stop the botanical plague of the Federation planet. So the abduction of Placis to make a point here, which violated the Prime Directive of non-interference in a planet's affairs, was justified as the end justified the means. The Federation received their much-needed Xenite, which saved billions of lives, and the troglodytes were well on their way to racial equality. In the episode Patterns of Force, as the Enterprise approaches the planet Ecos, it is attacked by atomic missiles. When Kirk and Spock beam down to Ecos to investigate, they find a frightening society based on Nazi Germany. Kirk is stunned to discover that John Gill, the Fuhrer, a former mentor of his from Starfleet Academy, has purposely established a society there to be like Nazi Germany, to make the Ecosians more efficient. But John Gill's deranged aide Melicon has begun a campaign to annihilate the nearby planet Zeon. John Gill, the Fuhrer of ECOS, violated the prime directive of non-interference on ECOS by making it a society based on Nazi Germany. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy were correct to interfere with ECOS's evolution and to get ECOS on a more healthy path and to save the planet Zeon from probable annihilation. In the episode A Taste of Armageddon, Kirk is warned not to approach Eminiar 7 by the Eminiars, but Ambassador Robert Fox insists that they continue to go there to establish diplomatic relations at all costs. There they learn that war has raged between Eminiar 7 and nearby Vendikar for 500 years, a war fought by computers. Whenever a hit is proclaimed, citizens dutifully march into disintegration machines. When the computer declares the Enterprise destroyed, Kirk, Spock, and the rest of the landing party are taken hostage in order to force the people aboard the Enterprise to report down to Eminiar 7 and march into disintegration machines. Kirk and company destroy many disintegration machines and a main computer that controls all other computers and which establish contact with Vendikar, thereby ending the computer-fought war with Vendikar. In doing these measures, Kirk violated the prime directive of non-interference in the planet's affairs, but he had to do these measures in order to save the lives of the people aboard the Enterprise, so he was right to do it. The threat of real war forced the Eminiars and Vendikar into peace negotiations that went well, as the ends surely justify the means here. The prime directive of non-interference can never be an absolute value to follow. In the episode The Return of the Archons, group mind control threatens the Enterprise crew. When the Enterprise visits Beta 3 to learn what happened to the U.S. Archon a century ago, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and company find a planet of blissful people controlled by Landru, an omnipotent, later to be discovered computer ruler. Landru absorbed the Archons into the body, a fate that awaits Kirk's crew unless he can find a way to destroy Landru. And he better hurry. The Enterprise is being pulled down into a decaying orbit by Landru. Kirk and Spock later reason with the computer to destroy itself, which was based on the knowledge of a man, Landru, who existed 6,000 years ago. By destroying Landru, the computer, as Spock pointed out to Kirk, they were violating the prime directive of non-interference with the planet's affairs. However, Kirk was justified in doing this interference because Landru posed a threat to Kirk and the landing party, and the Enterprise was about to be destroyed. In the episode called The Apple on Gamma Trianguli 6, Kirk and the landing party are plagued by poisonous plants, exploding rocks, and attacks by lightning. They learn from the childlike natives that the planet is ruled by Val, an all-seeing god which interprets Kirk's presence as a threat to the stability of their culture. To preserve this simplistic society, Val plans to destroy Kirk and company as well as the Enterprise. The Enterprise is being slowly pulled down by Val into a decaying orbit. Val tells the childlike natives to kill Kirk and company by hitting them with large sticks, which kills one of Kirk's crew. Kirk then orders Mr. Scott, who is aboard the Enterprise, to fire phaser beams at full force at Val, thus depleting Val's power reserves and destroying Val. As Spock pointed out to Kirk and McCoy, they violated the prime directive of non-interference in the planet's affairs by destroying Val. However, Kirk needed to destroy Val in order to save themselves and the Enterprise. Conclusions. In conclusion, the original Star Trek series was overall a pretty good series.